Alright, so welcome back. We're going to do a video comparing and having a look at some cassettes. See the different quality levels, compare some worn cassettes to some brand new cassettes versus some nice fancy one-piece cassettes. Also have a bit of a look as to what they actually do to a freewheel. Is it worth spending some money on a more expensive cassette? And what are you going to get? How do they wear? How do they affect your components? So what we've got a standard 105 5800 11 speed. Brand new, has not been used. I've also got a very worn 105 5800 cassette. This is the one that I did the chain review off. So it's got about 4,000 kilometers on it. The chain wasn't skipping over the top. You can see that there's a good amount of wear, but nonetheless, it's actually got a good amount of kilometers on it, and so we'll see how that's worn. We also have an Ultegra cassette. This is actually a 6600, so circa 2011. Probably got about 6,000 kilometers on it. It's off my road bike, so it's not very worn because I've done good long easy kilometers versus the commuting cassette. So it's probably got about 7,000 Ks in pretty good condition, but we'll have a look at that one. We've also got a Beat-Op cassette here. So this from the guys at Beat-Op Cycling. This is a one-piece machined chromoly cassette. So unlike the Shimano ones, which come in little pieces, so if you're using that particular cog, all the force is getting put through that tiny, tiny little slither of metal. So what the guys at Beat-Op have done, I've actually machined it out of a single piece of chromoly steel. All the force is being distributed on a large surface on the inside and also a large surface on the outside at either end of the cassette. The other advantage, if you look at these, you've got to go all the way from the outside to the inside with metal. They've cut it out obviously for lightness. When you get to the super big cogs, it's not efficient, so you actually tie them all together on a single spider. The Beat-Op guys have taken that a step further and tied every single cog, bar the last one, together. So a 28 speed and 11 speed 11 to 28 tooth cassette is actually lighter than 11 to 25, which is a much smaller diameter cassette. So it is bigger, it is lighter. We're going to see what it looks like under the microscope. So we'll have a look what the worn cassettes look like. We'll have a look at the surface finish of the different cassettes. I've also got a freewheel here. So this is again from the guys at Beat-Op Cycling. This is a Novatech wheel, free hub. So what you can actually see there, we've got some good solid gouging. So we're going to have a look at actually what's causing that. You can see that they've got the anti-bite guard, but hey, it looks like it may not be working. So let's have a little look as to why and what's happening there. We are going to find a few answers which are quite interesting. So let's jump onto the microscope, have a look at all of these, look for some wear patterns, look for some different manufacturing methods across them as well, and we'll see what we can find out. Alright, so here we are looking at the brand new 105 5800 cassette. So this is on the inside of it. This is the little ridges and valleys that go onto the free hub. And one thing that you can see here, if you have a close look, there we are. So about halfway, so the very tip of the screwdriver there, you can see how there's a little ridge. If you have a really close look at these cassettes, you'll see that they're stamped. It's basically from a sheet of metal, a guillotine comes down and squishes it out. So you've actually got a ridge running down the center of the middle of the surface there. So also having a look at how square these ridges are. So these are going to be the parts that engage the inside of the freewheel. So you can see here that little that surface right there. That's quite square. It's a good sharp lip between this surface and the inner surface there. The same on that side. So that's not too bad. That looks quite okay. Again, you've sort of got that little ridge halfway down. You can sort of see that there. That's not good because that's obviously going to be concentrating some force as you pedal along. It's not going to be distributed across the entire surface there. It's going to be concentrated on that point. until it wears away or until it digs in. Then it's going to be distributed across that face. But again, here on this little point, we can see that that's nice and square. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this cassette over and have a look at the other side. And this will be quite interesting indeed. So I'll get a smaller one. Okay. And immediately you could see there is a big difference here. You can see that this surface is quite a bit more rounded. So you can see how it's all very shiny. That's because it's a very rounded surface. It's not a square. And you can have a look at that one there. You can see this little point here is really rounded off, because this is the side that the guillotine comes off. So it actually bends and folds the metal over. So what this is going to mean, this is where it's biting into the free hub. You've got a much smaller surface area, which again means that you've got a very concentrated area of force that's going to be digging into your free hub body and basically just gouging the crap out of it. So this is a stamped cassette. You can see that the very important parts here are all folded over. That's going to concentrate the force, and we can see what that is actually going to do. So this is the brand new 5800 cassette, and you can see already that it's got some concerning marks. If we look at the teeth for a minute, so this is looking at the outside, so that's one of the teeth right there that the chain sits on. Again, you can see in here, look at that little ridge. That's what your chain's sitting on. Your chain is going to be sitting high on top of that ridge. It's going to be concentrating the force. It's going to be wearing that down before you're evenly distributing that force. Again, looking at the edge of the tooth there, that's not actually too bad. That's quite nice and square. So I'm actually pretty happy in terms of the way that the teeth are profiled here. They're all relatively nice and square and smooth. So it's really just the free hub. So again, you can see another tooth there. I'm going to flip it back around to the other side to look at the teeth. Okay, so here we can see again, they've been machined or honed, so they're all quite nice. So again, we can see that one there, nice, smooth and square. So that's the 105 5800 cassette. What we're going to go and have a look at now is an Ultegra cassette. So this is a slightly different series. Alrighty, so this is the inside. This is the part that rides on the free hub body. And this is, as I said before, it's relatively well worn. You can see you've still got the ridges there. So this has been used. More than likely it's been filed down. You can see that that's beautiful and square. So either side there, you look at where that's going to be digging into the free hub body, nice and square, ever so slightly rounded. You can see from that from the sheen there, but nonetheless not a bad machining job. We'll flip over to the other side, see if it's more rounded or not, which it is not. So this is an Ultegra cassette. You can see that there is definitely a quality difference in the way that this has been manufactured. You can see that the edges here, it's not rounded right here at the point. It's something that's done quite square. Obviously a different manufacturing process. Whether or not this is because it's an older version, maybe they've changed, I'm not too sure. But either way, you could see. The other thing to notice is that it looks like it has a much rougher surface. So it's a different surface finisher. It's more of a matte type of surface finish on this one. So let's have a look at the teeth. So again, this has had a good amount of wear on it. We'll see if we can pick a tooth that's got a little bit of wear off it. Alright. Let's just let the camera get a bit of light there. And here you can see the inside here. So a little bit of signs of some manufacturing there. It's been a little bit squished out of the mold. Nothing too crazy. No big folding over. Again, you can see the inside surface of that is quite polished from being worn. So where that's been riding against the chain, you can see. And again, having a little bit more of a look there, a little bit of a ridge, nothing too crazy. Doesn't look like it's very badly worn, but you can actually see a little bit of a ridge just about there as well. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. That's not too crazy. We'll flip it over to the other side and have a bit of a look. Okay, so you can see that's got a good amount of wear on it. No folding over. And again, not too much wear on the inside there. It all looks like it's quite well made. You can see a little bit of the lip there. But all in all, that's not too bad. So that's an Ultegra cassette that has had a moderate amount of wear, not too much, not too crazy, looks pretty even. So let's have a look at a very worn 105 cassette. So this is off that particular bicycle chain that I showed before. Alrighty, and as we can see, this is an 18 tooth cassette. Alright, get that microscope adjusted a little bit. Alright, so here you can see where I've marked a little bit of bad. So this is where it's digging into the cassette, this little ridge right about here. This is a 105 5800 cassette. That's on the inside where it bites into the freewheel. You can see that's beautiful and flat though. That's nice and square. You can see just a little bit is actually folded over here. That's not digging into the anti-bite guard. That's actually digging into the aluminium. And the surface there is a little bit smoother. I'm going to flick it and we could see where it's into the anti-bite guard. Alright, so here it is, that's a little marker there. So that's the corner that's digging into the anti-bite guard right there. As you can see, it's nice and square. Nothing too crazy there. We'll flip this over and then we will have a look. Alrighty, so back to the bad bit. Where are we? Alrighty. So here we go. Here's the bad bit. This is where it's digging in the cassette. And have a look at the corner there. That is super, that little blemish just above the screwdriver there. See how it's that little shape? Take note of that shape. That is really interesting. The other thing you notice is that it is really, really rounded. You can see the way that it just sort of curves off there because, again, it's a stamped part. You can see that it's really super, super rounded. Again, that's going to be a really interesting little telltale sign, that blemish mark there. If we go around to where the anti-bite guard is on the other side. Okay, where are we looking? Here it is here. So that's digging into the anti-bite guard. So just about here, again, super, super rounded because it is a pressed cassette. Lots of wear marks there. So let's have a look at what it looks like on the cassette where the teeth are. You can see this thing is pretty solidly gouged. You can see that that's been well and truly folded over from the wear on the cassette. Look at the inside surface, how much that's been polished from being worn away by the cassette. Again, quite interesting as to what the teeth look like. It's relatively rough. We go up to the next one. Again, super, super gouged out there. We'll let that contrast adjust a little bit, and you can sort of see again how much that's just been rolled and rubbed and rolled and rubbed and polished on the end there. So that's what it looks like. I'll see if I can get a shot of the actual teeth patterns of this one as well. So this is a worn cassette. Okay, there we are there. I'll get in focus. That is very interesting. So you can have a look there and you can see that the chain has only been riding on half of that sprocket. You can see how much it's worn on one side and how much on the other side, that inside bit, it has not been touched. So all the force is going through half of that cassette, it's going on half of the chain surface, and it hasn't even touched. So we'll go further away a little bit. Okay. So you can see up towards the tooth there at the bottom, you can see that all of it is completely mirror finished because it's completely worn, but elsewhere on that cog, completely untouched because it's not a completely flat cassette cog. So that's the 105 5800 well worn. If we go and have a look at the Ultegra cassette, we'll look at the end profile of that. So interesting, quite a bit different. You can see one side, it looks pretty manky, quite pitted. The other side is where the worn is where it's worn. So again, you're seeing the same pattern. The chain is only wearing away half of the cassette because it's not a nice, beautifully flat machine cassette. You can definitely see where the guillotine has done the old chop and it hasn't been machined off. So that was the Ultegra 6600, and we'll look at a brand new, untouched 5800 cassette. There it is there. So you can see the wear marks on the edge of that. You can see how it's been chopped from either side, and you've got that huge ridge in the middle. So again, you can see the different process used here, what it results in at the end of the day. We're going to have a quick look at the hub here. So this is the freewheel with the anti-bite guard, and let's see what we can have a look at. Alright, so here you can see we've got the ABG, the anti-bite guard, and look at that, we can see the gouges that this has been taken out of due to the cassette. The other very interesting thing is you have a look at the shape of that. On the right hand side, how it's a lot further in, and look at that one. Again, right hand side, it's a lot deeper. Same again, right hand side, it's a lot deeper. What that is that's one side of the cassette. How we said it was pressed before, one side's quite rounded, one side's quite smooth, and you can see that it's digging in on one side a heck of a lot more. So that's the side that's not rounded. You've got a concentrated force on the right hand side. It digs in further and it pushes towards the left. So this is why cheap cassettes, poor cassettes chew your freewheels, is because they're not machined well, it's not flat, you don't have the pressure distributed across the small surface to begin with, you've actually got it distributed across an even smaller surface. So this is what it looks like in the aluminium, and that's what it's looking like there. So even with the hardened steel anti-bite guard, it still makes a mess of the cassette because you've got a cassette, sorry, it makes a mess of the freewheel because you've got such high loads on a steel cassette on such a small surface area, it's going to chew it out regardless. So this is the BDOP cycling machined one-piece cassette, going to be a little bit more difficult to work with. But here you can see the side-on view of a tooth, and you can see it's that rougher finish. See if we can get a close-up of the finish. Very, very consistent because it's that matte. I'm not sure what process they use, whether or not it's like a bead blasting type of process, but ultra uniform, quite nice. If we look at the side-on end view of what the surface looks like that the chain's going to be riding in, we can see that here. They haven't used a guillotine. It's not sliced out of a single piece of material. This is a machined cassette. You can see how beautifully flat that is. Doesn't have that little ridge in the middle. Not going to concentrate forces on the middle of your cassette. You can see how lovely and flat that is. I can see if I can do a slight profile view. There we are there. Look at that. So again, beautifully, it is completely machined. It's not a cheap stamped piece of material. It's beautifully flat. It's been coated. Again, as I said, I'm not sure if it's like a bead blasting to harden the surface a little bit, but that is a beautifully flat surface. There's no ridges, and that's why you're paying a good amount of money for a quality piece of machinery. So there you go, that's the differences between the cassettes. That's what a good cassette looks like. That's what a bad cassette looks like, how they wear over time. I'm going to put some pictures up of an old hub that I've got as well, which is completely aluminium without the bite guard, and have a quick look at that as well. Alright, so as per before, you've got the Novatech hub with the anti-bite guard. Looks like it may not work that well because it's still digging in. We could see before that there was definitely some gouge marks even in the steel. That's done about 10,000 kilometers, been through 4 different cassettes. What I've got up here is a Hope Pro Evo 2, and it had about 1,000 kilometers on it. I could barely get the cassette off this particular hub because it was already so badly worn. So you can see to the left there, it was a 10-speed cassette. Popped it on a lathe, machined that out, made an 11-speed cassette, which you can do. And you can see the gouge marks here from the cassette right in the middle. As I said, that's probably done about 1,000, 1,500 kilometers. Could barely get the cassette off. Road to Hope, they said, hey, look, we use aluminium because it is lightweight. By the way, you've machined it, so there's no more warranty. So we have a look at another image here. Again, you could see how badly gouged that is in the higher speed gears. Again, little K's, I could barely get it off. They said if you can just file down those ridges, it'll be fine, it won't keep happening, which of course is not true. If you file down the edges, it'll dig in further, file down, dig in further, until you've gone through that entire spline. So here we could see exactly the same hub quite a few kilometers later. I think I got about 2,500 Ks before the hub fell to pieces. Different story, I'll post that up. And you could see the depth of the marks and the number of them there. So less than 3,000 kilometers, really gouged out. Could barely get cassettes off and on that thing. Tried to get a steel cassette body, couldn't find one, so you pay top dollar for a cassette. You can't find a steel free hub. Not sure what the average punter's supposed to do. So that's what a non-ABG cassette looks like. Super torn to shreds. So does the ABG work? The anti-bite guard? Yes, it does. But again, doesn't have much hope if you've got a hardened steel cassette. Super small area that force is going to be concentrated on. You know, you've got a 90+ kilo person jumping on that small couple of millimeter at most bit of steel. Doesn't have a bit of chance not to wear and dig into whatever that's there. So that's a comparison of some different free hub bodies.